Hey guys, just want to do a quick review of these two Elvis books I recently read. So this is the Faith of Elvis, a story only a brother can tell by Billy Stanley, and My Brother Elvis, The Final Years by David Stanley. So if you're not too familiar with the Stanley brothers, they're Elvis's stepbrothers. So in 1960, Vernon remarried, and I think her name was Dee, and she had three boys from her previous marriage. So they became, Elvis's stepbrothers. So they've been, I mean, there's been a lot of talk, people are talking about them, are they still making money off off Elvis's name? It really, like, David Stanley seems like he's always writes every couple of years, he writes a new Elvis book. Uh, what do I know? All I can say, I mean, they lived with Elvis for 17 years. They were in his inner circle. So, of course, they're going to have a lot of stories to tell. So I find it, and I like to read books where, with people that have actually, were in Elvis's lives, in his life. So that's all I got to say about that. So this first one, now, Billy Stanley, you know, to use a picture of him in the back over there. He wrote another book. I think it came out in '89. It was more of an all-tell book about his experience with Graceland. I can't find that anywhere. I couldn't find that on Amazon. It's probably out of print, but my library actually has it. So I might actually, take it out and read it eventually. But as you can see, this book, as it's, let me get rid of the glare here. It is the theme of the book. As you can see, it's kind of like a religious book. He talks about his experience with Elvis and almost like him, like each chapter is the lessons he learned with Elvis, and it always goes to kind of like a Bible verse. So if you're not really into that, if you're not really into like that religion side, then the book might not be for you. It's not really like a history of Elvis's career. It's a good book. I mean, it's a positive book. It's not a negative book. I know sometimes there's a lot of negative people just trying to like take shots of Elvis, or trying to put themselves over. I don't think he was. I think in this book. I don't think he was putting himself over. He was just telling stories about lessons that he learned with Elvis, different things. He talked about Christmas at Graceland. He talks about different stories. So it wasn't like I thought it was pretty good. I don't think it was like my favorite Elvis book. I don't think it's like, but it was it was pretty good. Let me see. The negative thing about the book is that the pictures are basically like black and white, but there's not really. Some of them are kind of blurry and stuff, so they're not really. Some of the pictures are kind of dark. But he has interesting stories. It's not a chronological book. He kind of skips around. It's not, and he tells different stories about, growing up with Elvis, and he talks about how, how he's accepted. Like Elvis became like a father figure to them, a mentor, and he talks about like the first time they were introduced to Elvis, and Elvis said that I always wanted a brother. Now I have three, and he really embraced them. And he really talked about how like their first day, and then the next day when they woke up, Elvis brought them like presents, gifts and toys, and they were all in the backyard. And he talked about that and how he was accepted into Elvis's life. All of them were. So we also got this book here. This one I really liked. My brother Elvis, from the last moments of glory to his tragic demise. So this is a little picture of David E. Stanley. There are quite a few pictures in here. So obviously the book is about David Stanley's it's about Elvis's last 5 years from 72 to 77. So he talks about like David becomes like an assistant and becomes his bodyguard, and really he talks about the difference between like life on the road. And it's almost like you're living two lives: the life on the road and life home at Graceland. It's almost like you were like two different people. And he kind of talks about that. It's almost like his own like autobiography, because he really talks about his life and his drug abuse, and him cheating on his wife and having all these women around him, and that's him right here. And it's an interesting book if you're really interested in in the later parts of Elvis's career, and if you ever wondered what life was on the road like, and being like one of part of Elvis's I guess Memphis Mafia. This is a picture on the bottom. Elvis's last vacation in Hawaii. Um, I don't want to nitpick, but it would be nice if the pictures were in color. But what can I do? And, so really, yeah. So it really talks about his experience, and what he mentions in the book is he notices like there was a change in Elvis towards the end, towards the later years, and he said that it wasn't the same Elvis that he grew up as a kid. Almost like Elvis changed, and I noticed that too. Well, I don't say I noticed it, but I read about that in Ginger Alden's book, and she talks about how like they didn't really do much when they were in Graceland. He didn't want to they're talking about he didn't want to ride horses anymore. He just basically stayed in his room and read books and stuff, and Dave Stanley in this book mentions that there was definitely a change in Elvis, and he talks about maybe like the prescription drugs might have done something to him, reprogrammed his brain or something like that. But so that stuff is in there too. He also talks about towards the end, and he talks about the loyalty that he had for Elvis. And sometimes I wondered in the book if he was just frustrated with Elvis and didn't want to. But he talked about at the end how loyal he was and how he was just wanted to be on the road with Elvis. And towards the end when Elvis died, and not really having that relationship with Vernon, who was his stepfather, and saying that really the guy that really raised him was Elvis. And he talked about after Elvis died, how he got a call from Vernon to come to Graceland, I guess. And Vernon went up to him and said, did you poison my son or something like that? And and Dave said, no, I didn't. And then at the end, Vernon just hands him his last paycheck, and that was kind of it. And he kind of mentions that was the last time he saw Vernon, and he realized that that Vernon wasn't really a father figure to him; it was Elvis and all that. So definitely recommend these books. I got these both from Amazon, but I've seen this one at Barnes & Noble. A couple Barnes & Nobles I've been to, I've seen this one. I haven't seen this one at Barnes & Noble. You might have to order this on Amazon. Again, these are not too expensive. The books are not really that expensive. Probably like $20 or so. This one I think is a little bit better. I would recommend this one. That's pretty much it. I'm currently reading this one. So I got this one. I'm almost, well, I don't want to say I'm halfway into it, but I'm a good portion into the book. And this is, about, I'm more interested in the later parts of Elvis's career, like in the 70s. But, I'm going to start with this one because, explains from the beginning, when he first started the rise of Elvis Presley, as it says on the cover here. So I'm going to really enjoying this one, and mention when I'm done, I'll give you kind of my thoughts of the book.